Welcome to the 8th training session for the 2022 SBPA internship program. Our speakers will be talking about literary programs and academy, Singapore Writers Festival, and the NAC Literary Department.
Award. This is named after our literary and library pioneer, Hedwig Anwar, Mrs. Anwar. This award, we call it HABA usually, because it's such a mouthful to call it by the full name, is presented again biannually to an outstanding children's book by a Singaporean writer and or illustrator. In the last edition, which just happened in 2022, we added an additional category. So we still have the picture books, but we added a middle grade category as we felt that the genre and the judging criteria between these two categories would differ quite a bit. Okay, a little bit about our signature programs. I'll probably just run through three of them. The Singapore Literature Prize, as I mentioned, is coming up this year. And established in 1992, it is the top literary prize. And it is one of the world's few multilingual literary awards. So we give it out in 4 languages, the 4 official Singapore languages. And the award is open only to Singaporeans or PR. So basically, we encourage writing by recognizing excellence. The upcoming edition will be held in August 2022 at Victoria Theatre. Okay, we recognize excellence in 12 categories. It will be 3 genres and 4 languages. And the award carries a prize money of 3,000. It used to be 10,000, but with the COVID and the slump in donations, we've dropped it to 3,000. Hopefully we'll bring it back up soon. So in addition to the prize money, the winners are given a specially commissioned plaque. We introduced a reader's favorite category in 2020, and the winners of this category receive $1,000 each. So there would be a reader's favorite for each language. Former SLP winners include luminaries like the late Ng Pei An, Muhammad Latif Mohamed, Kana Galatha, Suchan Christine Lim, Simon Tay, as well as a new generation of writers such as Sunny Liu, Amanda Lee Cole, Jeremy Tiang, and Marilyn Tan, who won for poetry in the last edition. Okay, so the other program that we do is the festival. AFCC, or the Asian Festival of Children's Content, is SBC's flagship festival. This is the key visual for the 2022 AFCC. It is illustrated by Lo Ju Hong, and it is to show the theme of Lit Up. So AFCC is the premier festival in Asia that supports and advocates the creation and appreciation of Singapore and Asian children's book and young adult fiction. The theme for 2022 was Lit Up because we thought, okay, let's move away from COVID we worked towards looking at what the future would hold for us and for literature. So the programs at AFCC focus on creative writing, picture books, comics and graphic novels, as well as digital media. You can find out more about AFCC at the website afcc.com.sg. Okay, so AFCC actually has different components. We have a conference, we have the book fair, we have public programs that are free to the public. The conference is actually ticketed. And every year we try to have a country of focus to encourage literary exchange between us and our neighbors. So the public programs are usually targeted at children. So the conference is for adults people who want to write for children, but our public programs could be targeted at adults, children, parent-child. So it would include things like book launches, storytelling performances, talks, and even workshops for children. Some of our past country of focus include actually all the ASEAN countries. And as part of the country of focus programs, we actually highlight the literary culture and heritage of the country of focus. So the country of focus or COF partners would be invited to put together panels that feature their writers and topics related to their countries. For 2023, we hope to invite Vietnam to be our country of focus. So if you are interested in culture from Vietnam, writing from Vietnam, do look out for it. So as part of AFCC, we do also organize exhibitions. As you can see, we used to have all the in-person exhibitions. Then with COVID, then we moved some of these exhibitions to the digital format. So like we would collaborate with the country of focus, like with Japan. They actually brought over some of their works to exhibit. And in 2018, when Singapore was the country of focus, we did an exhibition on Shan May's works. The Book Illustrators Gallery is actually an exhibition that showcases works by Asian and Southeast Asian illustrators. And currently it is on a digital format, and you can find it on the AFCC website. Okay, a little bit about Academy. So as mentioned, the Singapore SPC Academy is a year-round capability development slew of programs. It is aimed at providing quality and distinct programs that offer the latest professional knowledge and skills. We develop programs in the 4 languages, focusing on creative writing, translation, storytelling, and editing. And we hope to grow the community of writers, translators, illustrators to ensure a healthy literary arts sector. So beyond just creating programs for capability development, we try our best to support communities. So actually, book clubs and all, they are invited to take up our space, right, for meetings and talks. So, okay, a little bit about our space. So we are located at Goodman Arts Centre. So the building that you see here is actually the new block. We are not there. So the new block will have lifts and everything. We're actually on the right, and it's not in this picture, but we are in the old block. So we're on the 3rd level, and it's a daily exercise to get up to our office because there's no lift access. Okay. So within our office, we do have what we call the Writer's Lounge, or at least a communal space with lots of books, as you can see in the picture. And it is a free co-working space for writers of all genres. And the room can take about between 10 to 15 packs, and authors can actually write to us to ask for the space to network or to just have meetings or just sit there and write. The training room is where we actually organize our in-person workshops and talks, but we also rent it out to arts organizations and non-profits. So the capacity of the room is between 30 to 50 packs, depending on how you set it up. Okay, some of the challenges ahead. So I think for many organizations, nonprofits especially, funding is an issue. And although we are a major grant company and receive grant support from the National Arts Council, we still need to increase our funding to complete all the programs that we want to do through either get revenue or through donations. So, yeah. And we are always facing manpower issues as well. Like it's not just key staff, but volunteers, interns as well. Actually, if you look at our organizational makeup, the interns make up at about close to half of our entire manpower. So we have 7 permanent staff, but sometimes we have anything between 5 to 6 interns. supporting the various programs and departments. Marketing for literary arts is quite niche, and we do have a marketing department led by our colleague Ethan, trying to reach out to the audiences with our programs and awareness branding of not just SBC but Singapore literature in general. So yeah, this audience development is currently something that we're looking at very closely. So developing an audience who identify with Singapore literature, who are aware of Singapore literature, support it. And then, of course, a harder segment of this would be developing that audience that supports the Chinese, Malay, and Tamil literature. Yeah. So that's my presentation. You can connect with us through our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as look at our website to find out more about our programs. So support Singapore literature and our writers. Thank you.
Thank you, Celine.
Thank you, Erica.
Yes. Is there time for some questions and answers? Do you have time?
I think I do. So yeah, I'll try my best to answer any questions you have on SBC or some of the things that we are doing.
Okay. Hi guys, if you have questions, you can type it in the chat or just unmute yourself. We have like time for a few questions. Yeah. So.
Good morning, Celine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Cecilia.
So if you all have any question, please do ask because Book Council is very active. They also have a lot of courses that is available for writers. So if you're keen pursuing like writing skill, editorial skill, that is another areas that you all can look out. Yeah, they have been very supportive to our SBPA too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do look out for our courses that offer student pricing as well. So the student pricing is usually around $25 for 3-hour workshops. So we have one coming up on the 16th by Olivia Ho, from reader to reviewer. So Olivia Ho, as you know, writes for the Straits Times. So she's talking about how to go about book reviews, and we do have a student price for that if anybody's interested. Right.
Celine, this is Leslie.
Hi.
Hi, Celine. How is SBC campus different from Writers Festival Words Go Around?
Actually, it's quite similar.
Parallel.
Yeah. So we sort of started campus because then campus would be year round, and whereas WGR is for a short period only.
Yes.
And campus actually allows us more flexibility, as in we could like fine-tune programs, right, for specific requests. So sometimes we do get requests from schools to say, oh, they would like a workshop on poetry, and for a particular type of genre or a particular group of students, and we would then look for the most suitable writer who could present that. So it's a little bit more flexible, whereas WGR would be, okay, we have these 20 programs, and you can book them.
Well, publisher or writer or distributor for that matter can approach SBC to say, we have this writer, this is the sort of program he or she can run, and channel that through SBC to see how it could be offered to a school.
Yes, definitely. I think in October, Leslie, we are going to be starting to plan for WGR 2023.
You said WGR?
Yes, Words Go Round.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Singapore Book Council would be presenting programs for preschool and primary school. Singlet Station would be doing programs for secondary school. So NAC has approached us and done the split in this way. So if you have authors with whom you feel would be suitable for any of these categories, you could approach either us or SLS to talk about possible programs. We are supposed to start working on 2023 by October.
Okay. And that's what's go around. But then SBC is the campus is year round.
Yes. So anytime you have an interesting author, you could actually come to us. And so usually that one, we are not very aggressive about it. We put the author and the program on our website, and then schools reach out to us. Yeah. But if you have an author who has recently launched a book, right, we could try to do a promotion to schools for the program.
Okay. If you don't mind my asking, who will sell the book at the end of the for campus?
So it depends on the school. So I think the publisher can do it, or the publisher can assign a bookseller. But I think schools are now a lot more fussy about how the book sales is being done. So it's not that easy. And actually for campus, right, we don't really focus on the book sales, but more introduction of the author to the school kids. So if you're looking for assembly talks, right, maybe approaching a bookseller would be easier. So they would then do the assembly, arrange for the assembly talk, and then ensure that the school commits for a book sale.
Okay. And last question, for campus, do the schools offer any honorariums or anything to the writers, or does anybody pay anything, and if yes, who pays who?
So we do charge the school for it, and we do pay the authors an honorarium. It's a very, very modest honorarium, but we do pay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So for the book council, right, so we are trying to move towards leading by example. So we try to pay speakers generally for things.
Yes, that's a good message for all our audience. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Celine.
You're welcome. All right. If nobody else has any questions, then maybe I'll just pass the time to the next speaker.
Okay. Thank you so much, Celine. So now we'll be having a short break. Yeah. So we can go off for a break.
Sorry, I just got this thing. Yeah. Another example of working with our publications is with Tamil Murasu. This is interesting because again, storytelling, using stories, even though it's not writing, it is an important element of storytelling, especially when the traditional form. So we actually work with Tamil Murasu, who brought in, interestingly, I forgot what it's called. I think it's that Tiruputu, or is it? Oh no, so Vilu Batu. But basically, the storytelling involves a bow, and then there are like bells on this bow, that right here. So there's the music element and the storytelling element in it. So this was all been in the past editions, where the past festival director make it a point that each edition will focus on one particular language. So the Chapa one was chair, which the theme was chair, where it's a focus on the Chinese language. And then for Tamil Murasu was Aram. And then Berita Harian Malam Sastra was Sayang. So this one we are celebrating lyricist. See, not a book, but a lyricist again. It's the written thing. Zaidi Nadine, who sadly passed away in the very same year that we are paying tribute to him. So this was DK Barat lah. So all these are the key highlights that take place in Vector Theatre with a bigger audience. Wait, hold on. So these are the youth fringe. So as I mentioned, we realized that lately there's a lot of students coming in. I'm assuming there are students because of the age group, and we feel that this is a very valuable audience base that we should tap on regularly. So what we did previously before Pooja, who's the current festival director, stepped in, was that we will program things based on youth to what we think youth like. It didn't pan out that well, because at the end of the day, the people who are in the program are not used anymore. So it's all about assumption about what youth like. So what we did was we worked closely with at that point of time was Singlik Station, who have a good network of schools of youth that they work with. So what we did was we actually have youth curators who curate programs for us, who give us suggestions and proposals of programs that they think youth will like. And so these are some of the examples, Chow Play Game, some examples that they came up with. So for the first year, we tried it out, we experimented it. It worked well because obviously youth speaks to youths. So we do have a big number of youths coming in. So we realized that having this approach works better because like us, the older folks, we won't understand what youths like. So when the first time we see the proposal, we honestly we thought like, will this actually work? But actually it worked. So we followed that strategy and and that's why we bring in the community and the stakeholders in to help us out with the festival lah. Okay. So again, this is SFF playground. So these are targeted to families, to children. We had the Mumin. We worked too closely with the Finnish embassy. So the Finnish ambassador herself actually came down to do a reading together with this Mumin person here, because at that point in time, I think Finland was at their 125th anniversary around that time. So they wanted to also talk more about what Finland can offer. So these are some examples that we do for children. Most of them are very storytelling, very participatory. Right. Okay, so to be specific in the things that we work with publishers. So every year we have the book launch in SFF. This is where this is previous year's EDM. I believe Leslie also you received a call from us for the book launch and
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So every year we will send out a book launch to all publishers to give them slots to have their book launch in the festival. And so starting about when Pooja joined us in 2019, we do have program proposals, and this is where we work closely with selected publishers. Got one point of time in 2020, if I'm not wrong, when COVID hits, there was actually an open call for programs because of COVID. And it was very reactionary. I have to admit, it was very reactionary because what was planned, I think, with everything else that was happening in the world, what was planned had to push aside because we can't be there physically, and that's where we actually had an open call in our efforts to get in ideas and proposals from the entire scene, from the literary scene. So, but in fact, it actually went beyond the literary scene. We do have proposals from the theatre and from the music industry also to come in, because at the point of time, we do understand that the arts was struggling. So that is in our effort to assist the entire arts industry as best as we can. So in program proposals, as an example that I stated in the slide was that we work together with Unggun Creative to come up with Malay programs. The reason behind that was because while we were at NAC, we do understand that there are gaps in the literary scene. Like specifically for the Malay scene, there are gaps that we wanted to try to plug, but we might not be in the best position to do so. So we work together with Unggun Creative, who understand the scene better, who have personal contacts in the scene better, to assist us to curate Malay programs that will attract the people that go to the scene. Specifically, we had them to help us run workshops and masterclasses because they would know best what writers need at that point of time. So because they have their own writers in their own repertoire. So that's what we do with Unggun Creative. At the same time, we do have publishers who send us proposals. Some program proposals that they for our consideration. Yep. Therefore, and we do have the festival bookstore. I'll go back to the last slide, to the previous slide. So if you can see at the top here, this is the festival bookstore. In fact, we call it the magic bus or something. I forgot what it's called, but it was actually in a rundown bus. It was in a rundown bus. So a closet full of books was the one who took it up. Why we decided to do this was because it blends in nicely with as I mentioned, the literary pioneer from last year was the children's book, one of the children's book, Edric Anwar. So we thought it would seamlessly flow nicely into it. So we actually had a bus that they ship in from Malaysia, and they make it look nicer and stuff lah. So the bookstore was actually a buzz. So every year we will work with a publisher for a festival bookstore, and I believe there are interns also in this chat, right? In this Zoom, right? So for interns, we do work with interns. But unfortunately this year we didn't have time to think about it. But previously when we were with NAC, we have interns who work with us on programs. So there are two approaches, because it depends on the period that they join us. So if they join us earlier of the year, when we had interns, they assist us on programs. We tap them on their knowledge, especially for the youths at that point of time. And that point of time when we had interns, it wasn't with Puja, it was Kaisha, and we had a year-round program. So the interns assist us in curating some of the programs that we had, because some of the interns, they work with external organizations. So one of the things that I was personally proud of one particular intern was that he connected us with Science Center. So we thought like, okay, Science Center and writers, how did that work? But actually it worked. Just to give you a bit of a spiel, what we did was we did a poetry reading in the Omnimax Theatre. So that the point of time their show was about space, all the orbits and stuff. So with that as a background and a reading in front of it, so we managed to kind of combine science and writing in that one particular program. And that wouldn't have been possible if the intern didn't propose the program to us lah. So we were personally, I think the entire team was proud of that, of the intern for coming up with that suggestion. And also I think because he either worked in the Science Center previously or something like that. So these are the contacts that we made. So that's one example of how we work with intern for the program proposal, for the program bit. If interns are engaged in the later part of the year, this is where it's more of an operational and the production side. So we do have interns who assist us in the actual running of the festival. So this will be like about 2 or 3 months prior to November. It's basically, on the ground stuff, site recce's, working with, connecting with authors, asking them about with the speakers, asking them about their requirements, and working with event management company, that sort of thing lah. So it's very on the ground. But I believe that is also, they learn a lot through that, because they understand the actual running of the festival. It's not the planning process, the actual running. They understand the long hours behind it. They understand the heartache behind it. So I think there's a lot of fruitful and valuable insights that they can gather from either part of the period that they join us for their internship. So I believe this is my last slide, and I'm open to answer any questions. Anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you, Leo.
No worries.
If anyone has any questions, you can type that in the chat or unmute yourself. Yeah. I think we'll need some time to think about it.
Right, no worries. Maybe we can play some elevator music.
Oh yeah. or actually, while they're still thinking, maybe I have a question. Just now you mentioned something about GPA. I think it's the Golden Point Award. Do you want to maybe talk more about that?
Sorry. So I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Oh.
So you're mentioning about GPA, is it? And what?
Yeah.
Okay. So for GPA, a bit of background info and behind the scenes. There will be a team in ASOS Limited to handle GPA. So what the team does, because we work closely with NAC on this bit, because NRD Asia is also a subsidiary of NAC, is to, first and foremost, is to look for the judges for the GPA. To understand, so they will do a proposal, that particular phase, all these are about all the planning phase. So after the judging and things like that, is all after that is the call to submit all their stuff. But unfortunately, I don't have any insights or any info on the judging processes And once the submission comes in, unfortunately, I don't have any info on that part. But I do understand that obviously it's open to all the genres, it's open to all the languages, and each judge will look through the languages and the criteria of the judge of the judging. I'm not too sure, but I do understand that when the call was made, when the call is published, there are certain criteria, there are certain guidelines that the interested parties, when they want to submit, they have to read through and make sure that they take the guidelines before they submit. So that's my understanding of the GPA. Then it will culminate in the ceremony with a guest of honor and your photo ops and things like that.
Thank you.
No worries.
Does anyone else have questions? If there are no questions, we will start the next break. Anyone? Questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Leo.
Hey, thank you everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Right.
Share your screen.
Went quite fast. Okay, since the first two presentation went quite fast, but this is quite interesting that I like to share. Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of people are saying like how to monetize your book. That is quite some time. This was done in 2020. So I went ahead to do some research, and a lot of publishers or even individual authors, they will say like, how many copies of book that you can sell, and then use your book as a marketing tool, or you can actually do something else with your book. So there is a lot of way of doing it. So I'm going to share just a very short one. So for today, I think it's very hard to sell just a book. A lot of book is like the fact is like nearly 300,000 new books that published in America, but then the book scan actually shows that every 20 book per year sell is only 100,000 copies. Almost all these were actually novels. So the highest selling price is about like $25. This is just some facts that I'd like to share. And book sales become more and more challenging in America. Okay, so if your book is a marketing tool for something else, it will be even easier to make more money. So a book, it become a multi-purpose kind of like marketing tools for a lot of individual or even company. Okay, and they are actually quite unique. I will actually share a little bit more. Okay, so there's one example for this Melissa. She actually did a book called like a pop-up dynamic, and she estimate that she can make over $1 million from this book. Is that possible? Is that possible? So what happened is I like to share this video.
My name is Melissa Gonzalez. I am the founder of the Lioness Group. We work with brands to launch a store basically anywhere. Usually it's brick and mortar, sometimes it's mobile, shipping container, you name it. I never really wanted to be an author. I'm not necessarily a writer, but I did want to get my knowledge out there, our expertise, case studies of our experiences, and educate people. The idea of trying to sit down and write over 100 pages of text was mind-boggling to me. Like, I just didn't see that as a realistic outcome. Questions I had, all the questions, how do you go about it? Do I write an outline? How do you get an agent? How do you pitch it? What's the publishing process? Like, what if I can't write? How do I get an editor? I was just clueless to the process. The only thing I was clear on was if I want to be an expert, I need to write a book. Now what? One of the biggest surprises about the book, I would say, is the amount of inbound calls we started to receive. The phone ringing every day with somebody new from Vegas, from Canada, from Dubai, you name it, wanting to learn more because they read our book. Before my book, I was getting asked to speak at conferences. Now I'm getting paid and flown out to speak at conferences. And the number of people who had already bought it and had read it and come to meet me and have me sign it, that was really exciting and flattering and humbling at the same time. It was about a 6-month process. By December 1st, my book was available on Amazon, ebook, print on demand, and we were rocking and rolling. I have a number of friends who have signed with agents and had book deals, and it's 2 years later and they're still waiting for their book to come out. Whereas with this partnership, my first book came out in 6 months, and now we're working on a second edition. For me, the investment was well worth it. Not only did it position us as a thought leader, and I'm seeing the impact of that 1, 2, 3 years later, the first client that I signed because they read the book was 4 times my investment dollar-wise to publish my book. So it more than paid for itself. One of the added benefits is now my mom gets to call me her author daughter. So that's fun.
So so you can see from what this author has been saying, like she's not really author, but she actually tried to actually produce a book, and then later on she actually expand her business in a much bigger way. So so she do a lot of like talks, you know, talk about like how to dress up. So basically she is actually a consultant to actually advise companies to dress up their windows, you know, their store. So she become very, very popular in America. Yeah. So she do talks, like right now she go on air, she go on TV, she go on radio. So these are the publicity that she have. Yeah. And so she have her mission, she have her website, she even have a website to helps to do all this. So basically what this book have helped her in her business is like it established her branding, her authority, her credibility, and it raised visibility among the market. She increased her media coverage, you know, so people also start to look for her for help, and you know, it's like by word of mouth. Yeah. So there's another 14 ways that I can think of. This is what I think of. So you can actually become a consultant or coaching. So you can see there is a lot of this, even like property agents, they try to start up their own book talking about like the property market, and even like company like Gain City, they actually publish a interior design book, you know, a home living book, you know, to promote their own branding. You know, they find it that it's very worth it. And then it also can help to sell physical products, and you can also becomes like a speaker in a career. So let's say you publish a career book, then you can become a speaker, you know, or of that sort. If you publish a book, you can also sell the video course or information products, or even software, and promote the things that you are doing. Yeah. And get paid, you know. For instance, you can also like because you are become an author, you become a writer, some of this publisher may also engage you to be their freelance to write. You can also like do workshop to teach how to write, and you can do a lot. In fact, you can promote by book sales. So these are the few ways of like, you know, you can monetize. Okay. And then you can do like so-called like author. When you become a author, you can actually do like book sales at the store by having like an event, you know, by having like book sharing and things like that. So it's actually quite interesting areas that you can actually consider. Yeah. So I'm not very sure is this useful, but you know, you can be a professionals, most professionals, and the book is a very best multi-purpose of a marketing tools that you can actually use it in your career or in anywhere. Yeah. So that is the end of this presentations. Is there any questions for me?
Thank you, Miss Cecilia.
So let me see. So this is the end of the presentation. So our next speaker is Celine. Is she around already?
It's Hwei San.
Oh, Hwei San.
Yeah, but
is it?
she said she'll come at 11:30.
She will come in at 11:30. So just hang on for another 7 more minutes lah, I think. Okay.
Okay, then I'll
Okay,
play.
thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Can everyone see what's on screen?
Hi, we can see your slides.
Okay, great. There's still a few more minutes. Should I start first, or should I wait until 11:30 when everyone's back?
Oh, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning. My name is Shan, and I am an assistant director with the sector development team at NEC, looking after the literary arts. And thank you for inviting me to speak to you guys today about NEC's support for the literary arts sector. I'm realizing that I'm not sure whether the text is large enough for people to read. Is the other words like visible, clearly visible?
Yep, I can see them.
You can see it. Okay, great. Okay, so before I go into what NEC does, I thought it would be useful to have an overview of the literary arts ecosystem in Singapore. When we talk about the value chain, it can be sort of roughly broken down into these stages: content creation, production, distribution and retail, as well as engagement. And you'll see that I've also included a row on, who makes these activities happen along the way. I think these are stages that you guys would be somewhat familiar with, as you're going through the SBPA internship program. So of course, it starts with the creation of the literary content, whether it's the writing, translation, or illustration. There's of course the research that goes into the creation of the content, as well as structural editing that helps to refine the manuscript before it is ready to be submitted to a publisher. And then, of course, after it's been acquired, the manuscript may further undergo editing at pre-production before it's being go through the production process. And I think at this point, I do want to point out that it's not just the publishers who help to get a book to this stage. Literary agents are actually a key part of the value chain when they represent authors and sell rights to publishers for publication. When the book is completed, the next stage is then to market and publicize it, as well as to distribute it for sales in bookstores. I hope that some of you guys have had some of this experience during your internship so far. And that it's not just the publishers or the distributors that do this. Authors also play an important role in promoting their own books through appearances, their social media platforms, etc. And then when the book is available to the reading public, we also see how value is created beyond the publishing process through things like public programming, festivals, book clubs, literary prizes, as well as book reviews. So in terms of the broad areas of government activity within the literary arts ecosystem, it can roughly be categorized into these 4 areas: grants administration, sector development, legislation and policy, as well as just general other instruments. You'll see that NEC actually largely operates within the first 2, which is grants administration and sector development. But we also do a bit of cultural diplomacy in trying to see how the arts can be a part of Singapore's diplomatic efforts overseas. So what does NEC do exactly? At a very top line level, I think we try to shape the strategic directions and priorities of the arts sector in Singapore. We are actually coming towards the end of our SG Arts Plan, which started back in 2018 and ends this year. The plan actually maps NEC's priorities to bring Singapore arts development to new heights, with a view that the arts must energize and excite Singaporeans, bring people together, and reflect what Singapore represents to the global community. So these are actually articulated by the 3 strategic thrusts of this plan, which are inspire our people, connect our communities, and position Singapore globally. So under Inspire Our People, we hope that Singaporeans are empowered to create, present, and appreciate excellent art. So for example, a lot of the work that we do in terms of developing artists, supporting the presentations of art to the public all come under this particular strategic thrust. And then under Connect Our Communities, we recognize that the arts are valuable because, they can be used to encourage diverse communities to come together to enjoy and support the arts, but also to then bridge communities. And then lastly, under Position Singapore Globally, we aspire to have our arts and culture icons and works be appreciated by audiences and critics, both at home and abroad. Like many other public agencies, NEC has had to introduce many supporting measures for the arts sector during the pandemic. So actually since 2020, the Arts and Culture Resilience Package, the ACRP, has actually provided a total of $75 million to support the arts and culture sector during the pandemic. These time-limited schemes, actually focused on supporting arts organizations to do things like defray their operating costs, supporting artists and arts organizations to take this time to grow their capabilities in areas like digital presentation, as well as to transform their organizations. So these are just some of the NEC-specific schemes, such as the CDSA, DPG, the ACRP operating grant, the SEP grant, and so on and so forth. And then there are also other schemes that were available to the arts sector via other government agencies, such as the Small Business Recovery Grant, the Job Support Scheme, as well as the COVID Recovery Grant. As for NEC's regular project grant schemes, they are really designed to provide support to the arts sector along the different stages of the arts value chain. So if you recall the ecosystem slide that I shared earlier, we actually have project grant schemes that support the creation, production, and presentation processes, as well as to support the arts sector in developing markets and audiences. And then underlying all of this, we have the Capability Development Grant, which aims to support the continuous professional development of people working in the Singapore arts sector. And the research grant then supports projects that enable us to expand our knowledge and information of the sector via research. So for example, within the literary arts sector, writers and creators can apply to the creation grant to create new works. The production grant can be used to, for example, support large-scale festivals that are programs, performances that are available to the public. Of course, the publishers in Singapore will be familiar with the presentation and participation grant, of which the publishing grant as a subset of the PMP grant really supports the publication of literary titles in Singapore. Of course, the Market and Audience Development Grant can be used to support both market and audience development activities in Singapore, which include market research, branding and marketing and publicity, but also to support international activities. So for example, if a writer were invited to speak at, let's say, an international literary festival, then they could then apply for the MAD grant to help support them in some of the costs incurred. So maybe I'll pause here for any questions about the project grants.
Please, Zain, do you all have, how many applicants do you all get for this kind of grants normally?
It varies actually from grant scheme to grant scheme. So also because, for example, some of the grant schemes are actually open for application only once a year. So they have one application window. So these would be things like the creation grant, the production grant, as well as the research grant, if I remember correctly. Whereas the others are open for applications 3 times a year. So we generally tend to get more applications for those grants, like the PMP, the MAD, and the CD grants. I think in terms of the number of applicants, it's very much driven by the sector's own demand. For example, like in the past 2 years, because of the pandemic, when people weren't able to travel as much, the number of applicants for the market and audience development actually went down quite a bit. But we were quite reassured that actually in terms of publishing activity in Singapore, there was still a healthy number of applications for the publishing grant. So in some sense, the numbers do give us some idea of the amount of activity happening within the art scene.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are the grants distributed from the organizations or to the individual, or can the individual apply on their own? So yes, individuals can actually apply for NEC's grants. You can be an individual or an organization to apply for the grants, and the level of support will then vary as well, depending on the grant scheme and your status as applicant. I would encourage you guys to also check out NEC's website for more information on the different grant schemes, depending on what might interest you more. So for example, we have had writers who apply, so individual writers who apply for whether it's the Market and Audience Development Grant to travel overseas, also for the Capability Development Grant if they want to attend, let's say, writing courses, residencies, get workout and mentorship. And we also actually have had individual applicants for the publishing grant. So for some people who prefer to self-publish, so that means not go with a publisher, they can actually put in an application for the publishing grant. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Perhaps then I'll move on to my next slide. So NEC also works with key stakeholders through partnerships and commission projects to address sectoral gaps and also to advance our strategic priorities. So this would then sort of reside outside, the regular open grant schemes. Much of our work in sector development, within the LA team, looks at these three areas. Firstly, capability development. Second, public engagement. And third, internationalization and research. For the literary arts, we are really looking to nurture a pool of talent with an emphasis on grooming talent writing in the mother tongue languages, as well as in genres and forms that appeal to diverse writers. We do work with a wide range of stakeholders to deliver programs such as the NEC NTU Asia Creative Writing Program, the NEC NLB Writers Lab. We have worked with the American Literary Translators Association for a literary translation mentorship, as well as a number of international residency opportunities. And then for public engagement, we really want to cultivate a shared interest and appreciation for Singapore literature and stories, and also to encourage early exposure to Singapore literature amongst children and youth. So to this end, we, of course, NEC commissions the Singapore Writers Festival, which I hope you guys have attended. And we also work with our partners to deliver initiatives such as the Bi-Singlet movement, which is now known as the Singlet movement, the Read Our World book gift to schools, public engagement programs, both physical and digital, with partners such as the Esplanade and NLB, and also trying to introduce Singlet to the educational curriculum with MOE. And then on the last part, we are also working on establishing Singapore as an enabler of exchanges across Southeast Asian literary communities, and also to encourage literary discourse on Singapore literature. So we do this through, for example, programming focuses within the Writers' Festival, as well as commissioning research on Singapore literature. And also in order for us to do all of what I just sort of covered and mentioned, NEC, in particular, the sector development team works very closely with a wide range of stakeholders and partners to support the development of the sector as a whole. So this would include fellow public agencies such as NLB, IMDA, MOE, some of the CLGs such as the Arts House and the Esplanade. Also, within the literary arts sector, the private sector obviously is a key, component of it. So working with publishers, booksellers, and mainstream media. And also lastly, within the people sector, the nonprofits and associations within the arts community itself. So for example, NEC supports the Singapore Book Council as well as Singlet Station as our major companies. But there are also several other writers' associations and literary organizations, such as those that organize literary festivals, representing storytellers, and so on and so forth. To round things off, I also wanted to highlight NEC's focus on supporting self-employed persons as well as freelance practitioners, which was something that really came into focus and increased attention during the development of our SG Arts plan. So the Arts Resource Hub supports SCPs and freelancers to unlock opportunities and grow their careers. They do this by catering to cross-cutting needs of SCPs across the art forms, which then complements a lot of the genre-specific support that's available within the wider arts community. So for example, the ARH digital repository actually contains a job portal. There's information on training opportunities and career development. There's information on financial planning, legal support, as well as other resources available to the SCPs and freelancers. The Arts Resource Hub also then manages and runs 2 co-working spaces at the Goodman Arts Centre and the Stanford Arts Centre for ARH subscribers. So I think you can see that NEC support is actually quite wide-ranging in terms of the kinds of stakeholders we support: individuals, freelancers, non-profit entities, as well as for-profit entities. And then also in the kinds of work that we do in terms of spanning as much of the value chain as possible, to see, where where support is needed along the entire process of how a work is created, all the way through to how it's presented to the public and how it is then also marketed to the broader audience. And working then also with stakeholders within the community to be quite strategic about some of the gaps that need to be addressed within the different art forms. So actually, that rounds up my very quick presentation for today. If you would like to find out more about any of the support schemes that I've mentioned, please check out the NEC website, or you can also reach out to me via email, which now leaves me with just nice 15 minutes to perhaps take any other questions that you guys might have.
Thank you, Hwei Shan. So if you have questions, you can unmute yourself or type the... Oh yeah, you have a question now.
So the NEC's arts plan need any changes with the onset of the pandemic? So interestingly, for example, some of the things that we've been working on, like the support for SCPs and freelancers, was already sort of on the cards with the arts plan. But I think some of the things were accelerated with the pandemic. So for example, with the introduction of the SCP grant, which was one of our COVID support schemes, really tried to then help this particular group of stakeholders during the pandemic. And as a result of that, NEC has actually then folded that support for freelancers into our regular project grant schemes. So for example, within the CD grant, so the regular project grants that I covered just now, self-employed persons actually can enjoy a slightly higher level of funding support through NEC's regular grant schemes now. So I would say that with the pandemic, there were some changes. There were also some accelerations that happened as a result of that, which I think, so sort of in a good sense, that helped to speed things up along the way. So now, we have slightly more comprehensive support for this particular group of stakeholders. Are there any other questions about NEC or the literary arts sector in general? Okay, so for the grant schemes, for the NEC's project grants, for most of them, the intent is to support Singaporean practitioners. So you will see in the criteria that you typically need to be either a Singaporean citizen or a PR to apply for the grant schemes. But of course, we support Singaporeans who want to work with practitioners from other countries as well. So for example, I think in a more specific, early specific example is that for the publishing grant, actually we do allow foreign publishers to apply for the publishing grant if they are going to translate and publish a work that has been written by Singaporeans. So the grant schemes do have some room to support Singaporeans who work with overseas counterparts, as well as foreign publishers who want to publish Singapore work overseas. How is the amount for grants determined? Wow. Okay, so with NEC support, and I think quite typical of government support is that there is a funding cap. So, unfortunately, our grants aren't able to cover 100% of a project's costs. So, for example, the publishing grant is currently capped at 50% of the qualifying cost for a project. As to how the grant amount is determined, it really depends on how well the application is able to meet the grant scheme's assessment criteria. So each grant scheme will have different assessment criteria based on the objective of the grant. So, for example, again, I fall back on the publishing grant a lot because that's a lot of what that makes up a lot of what we do. With the publishing grant, we are looking at things like the artistic merit of the work being proposed. We're also looking at the ability of the work to engage the public, and also the capacity and commitment of the applicant to then execute and deliver the project. So the assessment is then made on those assessment criteria before we then arrive at the grant amount.
Does anyone else have questions, or shall we refer?
I hope everyone's internship is going well.
I think it has been going quite well, yes. Thank you. Okay, if there are no further questions, I guess I can start sharing my closing slides. Is that okay, Zain?
Yep.
Thank you for your presentation. All right.
Sorry,
All right.
I have
Thank you, Shan. Any questions?
I do have a question, Shan.
Yep.
Just so if the artists are granted at 50%, how do they make up the rest of the funding?
So in terms, it depends on the project. So for example, let's say, okay, whether it's a festival or a publishing project. So obviously with the publishing project, the publications we support should be made available for sale. It's also very much the intent to make sure that, the applicant is invested in making the work available to the general public, and not just, I guess, worst case scenario, print books and then like keep them in your cupboard, that kind of thing, right? So we do, make it a requirement that the book is available for public retail in the publishing grant. And as a result of that, then, the applicant is also expected to then earn the balance of the cost needed to deliver the project. So whether this is in terms of the earned income from the project or seeking other funding sources. So, for example, raising funds through donations, sponsorships, and so on and so forth to then cover the remaining 50% of the cost. So similarly with festivals, there could be things like ticketing. So I think what we're trying to do with the grants as well, because we're not able to support 100%, is also encourage people to then think about what the revenue streams are for their projects, as well as to pursue donations and sponsorships from other parties.
We have come to the end of the Sector Partners session. We hope you have benefited from it. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow our Facebook page to stay tuned